You're listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast with your host, Maggie Moggin.
Hi, small business owners. Welcome to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where we focus on creating brilliant breakthroughs for the small business owner. FYI, this is also the name of the #1 Amazon best-selling business book series for small businesses. It's titled Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, Fresh Perspectives on Profitability, People, Productivity, and Finding Peace in Your Business. And you can get a digital copy or paperback version of it. And today what we're referencing is volume 2 of the book series, which is the emerald green cover book. So today's conversation is with #1 best-selling business author from the 2018 book, that green one we just spoke about, Nancy Clairmont Carr. And I'd like to say, hi, rock stars. My name is Maggie Moggin. I'm also a #1 best-selling business author and creator of this awesome #1 best-selling Brilliant Breakthroughs annual business book series. For 15 years, I've been a master business coach and trained at Brilliant Breakthroughs, Inc. And let's move on to what's most important, our guest. So Nancy, welcome and congratulations on still that relatively new #1 best-selling business author status you've acquired.
Good morning, Maggie. Thanks for having me. And I'm still excited about being a #1 best-selling author because it gives us all a chance to get our message out. So thanks.
Right. You're welcome. You're welcome. So now, Nancy, let's talk about your chapter topic in the 2018 book. The second chapter is the one you wrote, and it's titled Higher Consciousness Creates Higher Profitability. And you wrote a good amount of why we need to pay attention to this topic to advance ourselves and our businesses. But I want to talk to you about something really important today, and that's about how stress impacts our health. Can you share a little bit with us about that?
I would love to. In fact, on a bigger frame, it impacts our performance in all areas. Stress is such a key factor in our performance. And so the health is really one of the first and most powerful ways that it does that. So I actually haven't shared a whole lot, even in the book, on why this is so near and dear to my heart. So I thought I'd take a few minutes today to talk about how stress has impacted my own health and what role it played in my journey to actually doing what I'm doing now.
Oh, cool. Take us on a story.
Okay, a little story. So I worked in the corporate world for about 15 years, and I did a little bit of teaching before that. And I've always been a real, I guess you could call it, hard worker, old-fashioned name for workaholic or whatever you want to say. And so to me, it's about getting the job done. And so one of the things I dealt with in that former pre-entrepreneurial life was burnout, quite a few times, in fact. And I'm sure you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure you can relate to that. But in the corporate world, I actually found it to be more prevalent for me because I hadn't really made adjustments that I've made now. And so what happened was I've had this longstanding belief, which I'm now eliminated probably 99% of, that you have to work hard for success. And that whole concept of, you and I've talked about before, of just work, work, work. And all work and no play makes Jack a very sick person. And in that case, I'm Jack here. So I got sick off and on because I wouldn't be able to sleep very well. And at the time, I didn't have the belief of regular workouts and other decompressing activities that would help relieve that stress. So, I did the work thing, worked very hard at a high stressful job, the corporate world in marketing, and then I'd go home and had a couple of kids. And of course, I'm the mom, so of course I felt responsible for everything. All you women who are listening, I will say that Dr. Libby Weaver from Australia's whole business is predicated upon helping women understand that maybe you don't have to do that role of doing every single thing at home and at work and everywhere else, and that you need to carve out some boundaries. Well, at the time, I didn't have those boundaries set up. And so, long story short, I had some severe burnout at a couple different times in my corporate life. And it was really that burnout that helped me come to the conclusion of, how's this working, Nancy? What are you going to do differently so that it doesn't continue? And it was really at that point that I decided it's not just on the external world, right? Because we get to decide how we want to live in this life. So
Right.
that was part of, that was half of the reason I left the corporate world. Is I no longer found that environment conducive to where I wanted to go next. And I knew I had to make a lot of changes within so that I didn't keep allowing that to happen, on treating myself in the way I was treating and not getting the kind of rest and relaxation and, creative energy I needed. So long story short, that's why I left the corporate world. And it was an experience that has really driven everything that I do now with my current clients and with my own life to maintain those boundaries. And so it's a really integral part, this keeping track of stress reduction and setting boundaries in life. I incorporate that as a critical piece as I do client work, because until people can get that in control, I find that it still is not going to give them the support they need to reach the quantum growth that they really want.
I really thank you for sharing that story, Nancy, because I think it's very relevant. It's relevant to me. I write about it in my chapter in the book from a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that many of us who have transitioned from corporate, where it's push, 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 to our own business, we still take that behavior on and move it over to our new business, and we don't need to. And it no
Exactly.
longer serves us. It didn't serve us then, but we were sold a bill of goods that it would, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
and
true.
now here it's actually counterproductive when you're in your own business. So thank you for sharing. This is huge. What else do you have to tell us about this?
Well, I wanted to point out a little bit about how things have changed in the medical community to recognize this. Doctors, the normal visit that people would go to, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, didn't really include, how are you managing your stress? What are you doing to decompress? It was pretty much pills, and those pills are still there. But I will say that the majority of doctors now are aware that stress plays a critical role. In fact, I want to share a few quotes that during the research on my book I came across. And most people know who Dr. Deepak Chopra is. He's been around in alternative medicine as well. He's a MD as well, and so he kind of has all training going for him to address Western and Eastern world medicine. And
Right.
he says it's been scientifically proven that we have influence over 95% of our well-being, and that we can actually prevent and reverse chronic conditions if caught in time and managed. That's a pretty profound statement coming from a doctor, I think. And the other thing that I know has been proven is stress causes over 90% of health challenges.
Right.
So when you think about it like that, and that doctors are completely aware now that you have to be doing something to reduce stress, it's something that as a business owner, we need to pay attention to. It's not just, you can't just burn the candle on both ends and eventually you'll be successful and everything will be okay. It doesn't work that way. We want to be high performance, sustaining high performance. That's what we want to be. And we want to be able to be creative thinkers and problem solvers. And when you're burning the candle on both ends and you're not doing anything to get rid of that pressure cooker, it's just very difficult to get to the level of impact that you want to have with your business. And I guess that's what I really want business owners to understand. So not just for me and my journey, but from an institutional and an industry standpoint, we need to pay attention in that we actually have 95% control of our well-being. So the other really famous doctor in the medical world and in the functional medical world in particular is Dr. Mark Hyman. He's a medical director at the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine. And he said something when I came across that I thought was so profound, even the words he uses to express it. He says, the most elusive aspect of success is well-being, which encompasses physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wealth. He used the word wealth. He said, money and power results too often from a sacrifice of the self and the abandonment of simple principles of self-care. So, end of quote. I can't tell you what a profound statement that is. He is one of the leading doctors in the country right now that is trying to help people understand this concept of balance. And it's a very profound concept. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is I actually have an ebook on my website that's free. Anybody can tap into it. And it's about being aligned. And so to align our physical, mental, and emotional health, we have to do that through getting each of those healthy. And that's exactly what Dr. Hyman is talking about. So I can't stress that enough. And in that little book, there's 10 things I point out, 10 steps that people can do to create that alignment. And they're not unusual things, I mean, by any stretch. But I just pulled it together in a easy to read format that when people read, they go, oh, okay, yeah, I know I've heard this before, but now I see why it's so critical. So I wanted to mention that. And then the last thing on this whole, medical community, the things that I talk about, and I really want to stress, Maggie, I know you're aware of this, and I know individually people are when you bring it up to them, but it's kind of a reminder, and that is some really basic things like sleep. So I know there's some people on Wall Street, and I know there's tycoons out in the Silicon Valley who brag about how much sleep they haven't had.
Mm.
And now that's changing. That is absolutely changing because of the science that's coming out and the proof that they're actually less productive. So getting enough sleep, making sure we're hydrated, making sure that we have the proper nutrition. In fact, the more stress we endure, the more nutrition we need, and the proper nutrition. So, whatever you need to do to meet up with the person who can help you determine that proper nutrition, I say go do it, because every person has a little different chemistry. In fact, Megan and I were just talking about that. So getting that proper amount of nutrition that's good for you is critical. And then of course the whole mindfulness and if it's meditation or whatever it is for you, and then exercise, and then those little creative breaks. And I'm going to talk more about those later, but I just wanted to point that out, because the more you read of Dr. Mark Hyman or Dr. Chopra, those are the things they talk about. And they're not expensive. They're things that we have control over as business owners. So science and the medical community has caught up with cutting edge, you call it new age people or whatever you want to call it, progressive thinkers, and we're all on the same page now. You need to manage your stress.
Well, it's about remembering that we are a whole system, and that's key. I appreciate you sharing about Dr. Hyman's word of wealth, because wealth comes from an old word that we don't even assimilate with its roots anymore, which is prosperity and prosperous. Prosperous people had good life, and life in its fullest extent: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, all of it. And it wasn't just prosperous or prosperity being financial as we see it today. Right. So thank you for taking us back to the roots of these very important words and the depth that they hold for us to move forward. I know there's another topic you want to talk about, and how stress impacts this other area of our being. Okay. So I'm
do.
going to say the word and then you're going to go because I know our time is just so limited here. So we're going to let Nancy rip on this one for a little bit and I'll be quiet. So stress impacts our consciousness.
Yes, you end that with the question, but I know you know the answer, so I'll expand on it. So there actually is a direct relationship between how stressed we are and how and a decrease in our creative solutions. And so I put that under the topic of consciousness. And again, one of the authors and a good friend of mine, actually, his name is Roger Drummer. He is the formulator at a company called HerbWorks, and he is a Chinese herbologist, and he's been in the field for 35 some years. And he says something really profound. He said, the biggest mistake many small business owners make is not preparing for stress. Oh, really? We can prepare for stress? He says, stress drops you into the fight or flight. Isn't that true?
Yes.
When you get really stressed, your thinking capacity is so limited. And then he goes on to say, intuition brings you into your upper brain. Well, so for those that haven't studied consciousness, that's what higher consciousness is. It's developing access to your upper brain or your intuitive, consciousness. So he says, a morning practice of meditation or energy work and proper nutrition sort of opens up those energy centers, sets your energy for the day, and then it affects every single thing you do the rest of the day. So how cool is that? Another thing, the information, he says, the information received from our higher intuition comes through those energy centers in the brain. So, we need to ask ourselves, shouldn't we prepare them for receiving this information? Shouldn't we prepare them for not being so stressed out and for being expansive so it can help us all day long? So the power of stress reduction goes beyond just an ache or pain that you might feel. It actually goes to the core of our creativity. And, he just highlights that, and he's just a wealth of wisdom. And the thing I also want to point out about access to our intuition, your intuitive brain, your intuitive mind is where your most real-time conscious, real-time solutions will come from. And so we want to keep that healthy.
Okay, that's important. Can you say that again, Nancy?
Yes. Your intuition, your consciousness, your intuitive brain is where the most real-time and optimal solutions are coming from. And so we want to keep that area as healthy, as non-stressed as possible. So that morning routine is great. It's not all we need to do, but it's really critical to start that day. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about morning routines, but that ability to either, whatever you want to call it, get quiet, focus, meditate, and then feed it the proper energy nutrition is energy for that brain that you really, really need. So high performance coaches, there's not a one of them that doesn't talk about that power hour or however much time you want to put to it every morning.
Right.
So that's, we all sit down, who are on purpose and focused. And we do this as much as possible on a regular basis, writing out your intentions or your goals, that intention setting, the visioning, maybe a little bit of light exercise, whatever it's going to be to get your blood flowing. Some people do yoga, mind mapping and various things, but that power hour is part of what Roger is talking about to set up your day. And I might add that the intentions you set during that time help govern the outcome all day long. And again, if you're stressed out to the max and you're not taking time to set those intentions in the morning and quite frankly all day long, but the overarching ones, you're missing out on an opportunity to create without a lot of effort.
I have to stop you right there and say yes. And for me, I took a challenge on last March to sleep. Sleep has always been elusive for me for different reasons. It doesn't matter. And I heard some research last year that made me go, this is what I need to work on to be an even higher performer. And what I found out, because I'm really good at 8, hours or more now, probably about 95% of the time. And before I could say if I hit it 5% of the time, I was lucky. So I've done a big flip, but I'm a huge proponent and practitioner of what I call a daily practice. I do more than an hour
Mhm.
because I know if I'm going to be outputting at a really high level, I need to do a lot of input in spades first to support all that output throughout the day. So the sleep boost has shifted my capability considerably. So if anyone's doubting what Nancy's saying, I'm here to tell you firsthand, she's spot on. Tell us the rest of the story,
Well,
Nancy.
and just one other comment on what you just said, Maggie. The problem with sleep deficit, it starts to create a brain fog that isn't lifted. And it increases. It doesn't just go away, by getting one good night's sleep. It's a cumulative effect. So I can see why you're feeling better, Maggie, and why you're feeling your output. That's actually a great formula. Increased input, meaning going inside input, increase equals an increased output. That's fact. So thanks for commenting on that.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to comment on is that our environment impacts, our external environment impacts our internal environment significantly. And, now that I've said that, it's kind of a circular. The external impacts the internal, and what we do with our internal then goes to impact the output or the external again. So it's kind of an interesting way to look at it. But there's a whole field, and I know some people are aware of this, and I talk a little bit about it in the chapter. Epigenetics is a field that 15, 20 years ago nobody had heard about, but it tells us that our DNA reacts to the stimulus we provide for it. And it's a very, very powerful concept that's very real. So Dr. Bruce Lipton is the one that sort of brought it to light in his famous book, The Biology of Belief. And he discusses how important it is to make those choices that support optimal expression within of our DNA. So everything I just mentioned in the first 15 minutes, the sleep, the water, the hydration, the mental calming, however you want to choose to do that. For Maggie, it's increased sleep. And actually for me, Maggie, it's also increased sleep. And the population doesn't realize it, but it is for them too. So all of those things go to creating optimal internal DNA environment. And so when you can do that, these are simple choices, lifestyle choices that we can make that are going to increase our output so dramatically with very little extra effort that you would be amazed and actually shocked. And it goes back to what I just said a few minutes ago, that it's minor incremental input for exponential output.
Yes.
So I would say take advantage of those simple things that you can do. And I learned that all the firsthand. I was actually a crazy woman for 15 years in the corporate world. I worked crazy hours. I had crazy expectations of myself. And then I'd go home and I had more crazy expectations. And it was really when I got pregnant with my third daughter, I said, how's this going to work if I have all these expectations that I can't even fill now, and I'm having one more kid and one more set of activities after school and blah, blah, blah. How's this going to work? And so I really had to do a check-in with myself. And that was one of the key reasons I had to leave and just change a whole lot of things. So I just can't tell you how powerful that whole concept of epigenetics is. And the reality is we're in control of our future. We are the drivers of this ship. And we get to choose. So if you want to be in control of your future, you have to be responsible and take control of the choices that you're making now. So I guess that's what I have to say about the epigenetics and the impact it will have on your DNA expression.
Okay, so right now I'm really aware of the time, and I know we wanted to talk about one more big topic about how we can support as small business owners, we can support our lifestyle better. Nancy, I'm going to give you the option here. Would you like to hold that off for next time and start there next time?
We can certainly do that if we're running out. Absolutely. I could talk all day on that next one.
I know you could, and I know what we want to discuss, and I really feel we would do it a disservice for small business owners. But
I agree.
what would you like to leave us with on how we can support ourselves better? Maybe a tip or two.
Yep, exactly. So I guess the thing is, I would invite you to sit with yourself for a bit and say, what are some of the habits I have right now that aren't really supporting high energy? What are the things I do on a regular basis that are actually depleting my energy, and maybe I haven't paid attention? What small change can I make that will turn that around? And I will just tell you 4 things I did that helped me, and this might help you with some self-reflection. The first thing I did was I started looking at the food I was eating, and I slowly took away all those things that actually took my energy away and made me feel tired, made me, gain weight or whatever it was. It was mostly the tired feeling. It wasn't an energy food for me. So I evaluated and I took all that away. I started to sleep more. That was a big thing for me. The third thing I did was I started to ask myself, who are the people I'm hanging with that actually totally take my energy away? And question if they're adding a lot of value or is it just a habit? And you might start weaning yourself of the time that you're spending with those people, right? And then the last thing is, are you giving yourself any quiet time during the day? And if there's one thing you could do that would change your life, probably most dramatically, that could be it. Giving yourself, if it's not that hour in the morning, maybe it's 5 minutes. And maybe it's another 5 minutes during the middle of the day and another 5 minutes at night. You can start with that, whatever it is for you. But without that quiet time, you have no idea what your intuition is trying to tell you to do, the unbelievably creative solutions you can access, and how quickly you'll become more productive. And so if you're a business owner, isn't that what you want? You want to be more productive, more profitable, and in less time. So those are the things I would invite you to reflect on and start making incremental changes, and you'll be happy that you did.
Okay, so there we have 4 things to be thinking about. Thank you for sharing, because I think that makes a difference. And how about if we pick up here next time?
Perfect. Thank you.
And get into some of the practical applications of this.
That sounds great.
Like
Thanks again, Maggie. I really appreciate the time to share this and remind people to take a look at the book. It's a powerful book from all 8 authors.
All right, so listeners, this is how you can learn more and engage with #1 best-selling business author, Nancy Clairmont Carr. Start by reading chapter 2 of the book, and it's titled Higher Consciousness Creates Higher Profitability. And it's still in the #1 new release book, Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, and that's volume 2 with the green cover. And gift your business's performance by accepting the invitation that Nancy has. At the end of the chapter, there's an author page, and she has a very relevant and free offer to engage further with her. Take her up on that, folks. Plus, there's all sorts of other social media handles that you can connect with Nancy Clairmont Carr at the end of her chapter. So here's something that's really cool, everyone. Right now, you can see everything about the book and how to get a hold of Nancy by going to the Books app in your app store and download Brilliant Biz Book. That's all one word, Brilliant Biz Book. It's free and it's in your app store. Check it out. You'll be amazed. All our podcasts are there. Oh, everything's there. And here's what's really cool. You can click on Ask an Expert and you will see Nancy Clairmont Carr's name. Now, I want to be specific because we also have another author named Nancy. So we're speaking with Nancy Clairmont Carr now. And if you have a question that's relevant to what we just discussed, go ahead and click on her name, type your question, and Nancy will reply back to you. I think that's a pretty cool bonus for you listening today. Don't you think that's neat, Nancy?
Absolutely. I encourage them to do so.
All right. So I want to thank you, Nancy, for your time and your wisdom sharing today. You opened up this topic in a really broad sense, and then you brought it back to us so we could apply it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll connect next time.
Absolutely. And listeners, we appreciate you listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where you learn more about how to create more brilliant breakthroughs for your small business. We'll be back next week. So until then, shine brightly.